but not one member of Congress or leaders of the national security committees were informed. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel testifying tomorrow before the House Armed Services Committee. And we continue to see that video, and as we see that, it prompts questions that can be answered or at the very least analyzed by Lisa Ruth, the former CIA analyst. Lisa, we welcome you back to America's Forum.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
Let's begin with the whole notion of congressional oversight and the agency communicating with the chairman of the intelligence committees, and in turn the administration communicating with the chairman of the Armed Services Committee. In your wildest dreams, did you ever expect a situation like this to develop?
We're talking about complete systemic breakdown here. As you know, JD, this is not how it works. I don't understand what's going on, but I can tell you it's a real big problem. And we've talked before on this show about the issue with Feinstein and the CIA. We've talked about all these divisions. We really are looking at a situation where, in my opinion, intelligence is under fire, and it's going to be under more fire because of this breakdown in conversation.
It is unfathomable, unimaginable that 90 people within the administration know this. Sexby Chambliss was making the point that when it came to taking out bin Laden, they had been informed that operation was underway months ahead of time. Why the reticence here, and why the need in Washington to attribute this to, quote, incompetence?
Again, you know, you're looking at this has been in years in the making. We know this. This has been on the table for a long time. Why we didn't have information, why, not we shouldn't have information, but why Congress didn't have information is beyond me. I also think it sets up a very, very difficult situation going forward. How much oversight is there? If there's no conversation, how can we be sure anything that's going on? There's no trust. We have a complete breakdown here.
And I think it speaks to the relationship, or maybe the dilapidated relationship between the White House and Congress here. Maybe there's been a, you know, I guess it's eroded to the point where the president feel like he could tell Congress here. But Lisa, do you see this as a continuing pattern with the president continuing to act like this? And if so, I mean, Congress certainly has the option to push back a little bit. What do you see Congress doing?
What I really am afraid of, more than anything, is that we're setting up a situation where for the remainder of the presidency, it's just going to be blocking heads. And again, my little bailiwick looking at the intelligence community, they've got to be sitting there saying, what do we do? How are we going to get anything through? If Congress and the executive don't communicate, how far off are we? How are we going to get anything done?
We see video right now of what is now become an infamous Rose Garden ceremony. The parents of Bo Bergdahl, in particular his father, growing the beard, intoning, I believe, in Pashto, an Islamic prayer. One pundit likened that to, at the height of World War II, if there were a prisoner release, having a parent come speak fluent German at the White House. This whole spectacle, again, it's almost as if a satirist could not have invented it years ago, but it's become the reality. And we're getting all these conflicting reports about Bergdahl. Looking at this situation, are we supposed to wait for the, quote, dust to settle? Or let me turn around. When spies would come in from the cold, so to speak, when people during the Cold War would come over to our side, there was a period where they had to acclimate, to readjust. Now with Bergdahl, we get reports over the weekend that he did not want to speak with his parents. Psychologically, he was not ready. Do you believe there is any actionable intelligence that we can gather from Bo Bergdahl?
Oh gosh, I really don't know. But to your point, the whole situation is so bizarre. When we had defectors come over, the first thing we would do is put them in a safe location and really assess what was going on. This was not an immediate, hey, welcome back. And we certainly didn't have a Rose Garden announcement about it. You have to really take some time and assess what's going on. And part of my problem as an analyst is we just don't know. There's too many unanswered questions. There's, like you said, just bizarre. Satirist is a great way of looking at it. We have to step back, not we, but as the government has to step back and really assess what's going on. The family, it sounds now like they had plenty of warning to know about this, which suggests that the father went in and did this intentionally, which, if nothing else, is slightly insulting, really.
Insulting to utter those words. I mean, there have been other people to point out the fact that these same words have been spoken by others at the White House before, and also by Hamid Karzai before a joint session of Congress as well. So you can break down. I mean, I think it is important to take at least a step back here before we assess. I mean, it's impossible to know what it's like for a parent to have their son believed still living in captivity, at least in their mind, and a departure from normal behavior. I think you got to give them some latitude.
Fair enough.
On that.
Fair enough.
But I think it's certainly fair at this point to criticize the Rose Garden press conference. I do feel somewhat qualified, having worked in the media for 10 years, to know that was a huge faux pas by the president, and it shows how detached they were from public sentiment on this issue.
There's one other fact about this, and we are getting reports that Mr. and Mrs. Bergdahl were given incredible access, listening in on conversations, presumably with intelligence officials. Do you know of any other situation where parents, and I think we all have a heartfelt concern for parents whose kids are taken prisoner or missing in action, but do you know of any other situation where that's transpired in government?
I do not. And John, as you said, certainly as a parent, I'm sure that you're desperate for any bit of information, but I've never heard being included on classified briefings, and particularly when we can't let the Congress in on these things, but letting the parents in, the rationale sort of breaks down a little bit.
There's one other thing that just happened before we were coming on the air, and that is in Iraq. The announcement of a state of emergency as Mosul has been taken over by opposition forces. Has our intelligence apparatus just gone away in Iraq? Has basically every trace of American influence been taken away?
Iraq has been a real problem, as you guys know, over the last several months. The militants have had considerable advances with no stop from the government. And just last week, they came into Samarra, and now we're having more and more. It's another indication, in my opinion, that we don't have good intelligence, or perhaps that the Iraqi government isn't working with us as closely, but we certainly don't have what we did when we were in there before.
The concern echoes of history. When you take a look at Mosul, when you take a look at Fallujah, you wonder what happens next in Baghdad. And for those of us who are baby boomers, we wonder if there's a certain synergy that now going on in Iraq in 2014 looks suspiciously like Saigon in the mid-1970s.
That's an excellent point. We also had in Iraq last week the autonomous area of Kurdistan, bombs there. It's spreading all over the place and doesn't look like it's going to stop anytime soon.
And a lot of this violence in Iraq is headed up by that group, the Islamic State of Syria and Iraq, also called ISIS, which is a terrorist organization, but it's acting more and more like a state organization. They call themselves the Islamic State. They're looking for a caliphate. They are fighting the Iraqi government. They're fighting other Islamic militants in the area, and it's completely messed up. I don't know a better word for it, but it just shows the disruptive nature of Iraq at this time. A state of emergency. Here we are after all the blood, sweat, and tears that have been spilled there.
Well, the world will always be a dangerous place, and the danger has come to our border in the guise of children, unaccompanied children. Now, Lisa, that suggests a porousness on the border. If these kids come to America's doorstep, how many groups intending to do us ill are using our southern border right now? Do you have any handle on what is going on down there?
Honestly, I don't think anybody does. It's been compared to the Wild Wild West, and the porous border is absolutely accurate. There's people coming through. We knew that the drug cartels, last time we were here, we spoke about that. They've moved across the border. When kids can come across, there is no control, and I think we're fooling ourselves to believe that we can stop anything.
The synergy of, I hate to get, but the methods of execution. We now see among the drug cartels beheadings. And that's a theme we see as the battles continue in the Middle East with the rise of Islamofascism and Islamo-terror. Do you believe that those groups are the the cartel members in Mexico working in concert with the Islamo-fascists?
I don't think it's out of the question, and certainly historically through Latin America, there has been a relationship between Middle Eastern terrorists and drug traffickers. But again, I also think beheadings, welcome to the internet world. You know, it doesn't take a lot to figure out what really catches our attention here, and beheadings are something that causes terror, and it makes a big statement.
Lisa Ruth, you have caught our attention with a sober assessment of what is transpiring worldwide. As always, we thank you for your input.
Thank you.
And now it's your turn. Your take on what is happening internationally. We have the situation going on in Iraq. Is there the rise of the Islamic Caliphate there? And what's happening on our doorstep? Not to mention the Bergdahl case. Your opinions on any of these things encouraged and welcomed. Why don't you tweet us your comments at Newsmax TV, hashtag America's Forum. There's also email, connect@newsmaxtv.com. And don't forget Facebook, y'all. We're coming right back with more on America's Forum.